The year is 1118, and this is Paris. The city is a bustling hub of intellectualism, home to some of Europe's best universities and cathedrals that are considered architectural marvels. It's here where two star-crossed lovers, Abelard and Héloïse, will meet, fall in love, have a child together, and then part ways forever. But not before writing each other over 100 letters detailing their tumultuous relationship. These letters would go on to become some of the most passionate ever written, with some historians even considering them the earliest example of Western erotic literature. Their story, well, it's something of an oldie but a goodie, so let's get into it. Peter Abelard was born into a family of modest means in the region of France known as Picardy. His father had been a small landowner, having passed away when Peter was still quite young. By all accounts, Peter was an intelligent student from a very early age, and after finishing his primary education, he went on to study theology and philosophy at the University of Paris. Although Abelard was only in his 20s, he was already making a name for himself as a philosopher. He wrote books, gave lectures, attracted students, and even challenged fellow scholars to debates, which he mostly won. All the while, he continued to advance through the ranks of the church, eventually being appointed the prior of a monastery just outside the city. It was around this time, around the year 1114, that he first met the woman who would become his one true love, Héloïse de Key. Héloïse was the niece of a wealthy landowning woman named Adelaide de Savoie, who lived near the monastery where Abelard was working. According to legend, Adelaide was so impressed with Abelard's scholarship that she invited him to her house to give her niece, who was only 16 years old, private lessons in the liberal arts. But Abelard wasn't interested in teaching, at least not in that moment. Instead, he fell madly in love with the teenager. And although she was just a student, Héloïse felt comfortable enough around him to reciprocate those feelings. History tells us that they began a romantic affair, though how exactly that happened isn't fully clear. One theory is that Adelaide set the two up, seeing as she herself was living a life of celibacy. Whatever the case may be, Abelard and Héloïse began having an affair. They exchanged poetry, affection, and ultimately sexual relations, despite the fact that both were technically members of the clergy, and therefore weren't supposed to be engaging in such activities. After 2 years of dating in secret, Héloïse became pregnant. She miscarried soon after, but recovered and conceived again. This time she gave birth to a baby boy, who they named Astrolabe. With their secret now out, Abelard and Héloïse decided that the only course of action was to marry. They did so in secret once again, and they attempted to live together as man and wife. But because their marriage was forbidden, they had to hide from both of their families. For 2 years, they lived in Paris in a state of secrecy, until, of course, Héloïse's brother, who had been searching for her, found them and dragged them both back to her family estate. There, they separated. Her family took Héloïse back in and raised her son, while Abelard was forced to move away from Paris and take a position as a monk at a monastery in the south of France. Although the two lovers were separated, they continued to write to each other. In total, they exchanged 117 letters, 34 of which were written by Abelard and 83 by Héloïse. Of those letters, though, Abelard only wrote 3 directly following their separation. That makes the letter we're reading from today, letter 3, the third letter Abelard wrote to Héloïse following their breakup. Let's take a look. My God has delivered me from evil. My God has answered my supplications. My God has hearkened to my prayer. But alas, you have not yet appeased your wrath. For this cause, my most sweet, my only good, I have preserved silence for more than 4 months, being afraid lest the violence of your anger should hinder the healing of your wounds. What could I say? How could I speak? If I told you I loved you, what proof could I give you? Would my words ring true if they were not backed by deeds? You want deeds, not words. Alas, I cannot do what I would. Distance hinders me, and my inability is a cruel taskmaster. Oh, that I could only show you how much I am changed and reformed. Then you would see better. Then you would know better. Then you would trust better. Believe me, at least, my God, my end shall make amends for my whole life. It's important to remember here that Abelard and Héloïse were intellectuals. They understood the power of language and knew how to use words to convey meaning. They also used this understanding in their personal lives, with many scholars arguing that their letters are evidence of one of the first philosophically minded relationships in Western culture. In this letter, we can see that Abelard has been reflecting on his past behavior. He admits that Héloïse has reason to be upset with him and recognizes that he hasn't done enough to win her back. He says that he has prayed to God about their situation and has received forgiveness. But he admits that she has not forgiven him yet, and that's why he is writing her this letter. He wants to explain his side of things and tell her that he is truly sorry for what happened. Abelard goes on to say that he knows Héloïse doesn't believe he's changed, but insists that he has. He says that if she could only see how much he's changed, she would forgive him. But obviously, since they aren't together, she can't see how much he's changed. So instead, he has to convince her using only his words. He says that he can't do the things she wants him to do because they are no longer together, and because he can't afford to travel to see her due to his new position as a monk. After saying this, Abelard kind of realizes how lame of an excuse that is. So he quickly tries to change the subject by saying that he hopes that God will allow him to do right by her in the end, saying that he believes that his death will make up for all the wrongs he committed while alive. Obviously, he's referring to the fact that he'll die a martyr, probably because he was hoping that his death would win Héloïse back. This is pretty apparent in the next letter he writes to her, where he describes a dream he had where he was visited by an angel who told him he'd die in 30 days. He interprets this as a sign that his life is in danger, and he suspects that his enemies, who are actually his former colleagues from Paris, are out to get him. Because of this, he says, he'll have to leave his position at the southern monastery and return to Paris, and there's only one reason he wants to go back. He says, and I quote, "If the Lord grants that I come to you, oh, what joy will fill my heart." Of course, upon hearing this, Héloïse writes back and tells him that he shouldn't come back because she doesn't want him to die. But Abelard was already dead set on his plan, and he ended up returning to Paris. There, he was indeed attacked by his enemies and stabbed multiple times. Though he survived the initial attack, complications from his wounds led to him becoming impotent, and he returned to northern France to recuperate. Meanwhile, Héloïse and her son moved in with her Aunt Adelaide, who cared for them both as her own. Eventually, Abelard became the abbot of a monastery near Héloïse's family estate, and the two began seeing each other again, this time platonically. Together, they spent their days discussing philosophy and theology, and they even collaborated on a book about the relationship between faith and reason. Ultimately, Abelard never forgot his one true love, though, and he kept a portrait of her next to his bed until his death. And that, my friends, was the tragic tale of Abelard and Héloïse, whose story and love letters continue to inspire artists, filmmakers, and scholars alike. What did you think of the story? Do you think Abelard was sincere in his apology? Does it matter that he was a man ahead of his time? And what about Héloïse? Do you think she was too quick to judge him? Let me know your thoughts down below. And thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time.